Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm David Yak here for Yak About Today. So, when I'm out and about, or at a dinner, or a gathering, I'm always fascinated by your opinions, thoughts, questions, and before I sit down in front of this mic, I look for answers to your questions, share your thoughts, and bring you the latest information from the best people I can find. So, if all this is of interest to you, then this is the place you want to be. So get up, put your headphones on, go for a run, and listen to what we yak about today. So 5 years ago, we began a radio broadcast called Yak About Tech. It was a technology show for those that were having difficulty adapting to new technologies. As the show evolved, we expanded it to include anything we found helpful to the more senior and sometimes wiser of our community. Thus, the name changed to Yak About Today. So you'll notice that the opening music changed. I was sort of inspired by my favorite YouTuber, Marquez Brownlee, who does tech, who always rotates his music at the beginning. So I decided instead of playing the same old theme song each week, we'd mix it up a bit with different sounds and music that inspire us or fit the theme of the show. Also, since Yak About Today is now designed as a podcast first, we'll have the ability to bring you more information, more segments, and more complete guest interviews. And for those of you who are listening to this on your local broadcast station and get cut off at the end, you can always listen to the complete show at yakabouttoday.com or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be right back. For a while now, I've been contemplating a segment called Why You Should Give a Damn. You know, we spend a lot of time here at Yak About Today finding people and info that benefit our boomer audience. But I think sometimes we have to take a look past ourselves and our own interests. There are things that we really need to care about, whether it be the environment, climate change, education, health, all of which have an effect on all generations, not just the boomer population. But even more importantly, these things will have an impact on our future and our children's future. I'm hoping that this is the one segment that will light up the Facebook page. Now, having said that, today we have Heather Kramer, the art and science educator at the Environmental Learning Center. She's been using the outdoors as a classroom and a place of inspiration for over 10 years, believing there is a firm connection between science and art. She finds relevance in the patterns and cycles that nature presents. She emphasizes these foundations through hands-on, art-based learning opportunities, both for herself and students of all ages. She works to create educational pieces that connect the communities to their local ecosystems. So, thanks for being here, Heather. I really, really appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so let's start from the very beginning. So, ELC, Environmental Learning Center, and we're talking art and science. Hit it.
Yeah, so I always like to remind people of what ELC's mission statement is, which is to educate, empower, and inspire people to be active stewards of their environment and their own well-being. And one of the ways that I have experience with is through art. And so I've been an educator for over 10 years now, and almost without even thinking about it, the lessons that I was designing around science and nature always had an art hands-on component to it.
And an example of that.
So one of the first lessons that I ever ended up developing was around constellations and astronomy. And as I was doing research, I was realizing that not only is astronomy the first science where humans are looking up at the stars, noticing patterns, and making shapes out of those patterns that they see, but they were also connecting stories to it. So the Greeks were reaching into their mythology, into their religion, and connecting those constellations with what they believed. And so as I was developing these lessons and incorporating these like creative cultural aspects, I realized that the students were relating more to the content because of these stories. So something as big and expansive as astronomy now became a part of their individual experience. So this became the trend that I followed when designing lessons with children, is that if I gave them an opportunity to be creative or showed a creative aspect of it, they walked away with something tangible.
So let me see if I can get this right. Are you saying that learning about art would help students in their appreciation of science? Or do I have it backwards?
I think that one of the mistakes of modern day education, and I don't know if we should go into that here, but I think that one of the things that we tend to do is separate things into categories to maybe better understand them. And so saying that art is separate from this scientific study is almost like doing it an injustice. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's connected no matter what. So the study of it and the art of it, it's just part of it. So I'm not teaching the kids art, but I am allowing them to be artistic and creative while exploring some of the art forms that were part of the science. I just talked in circles there.
It's all right. I think people understand. But I do want to ask you something. I think this is what you were getting at earlier when you said, I don't think we should get into that. I think you were going to reference how art programs are being cut. They're not considered as significant as, the math and sciences. Those programs, you feel that those programs are important in supporting science and math and nature and all that. Is that it?
Yeah,
Do I have it right?
I agree with you. I think that, in school you go to science class and then you go to math class, even though they're very much related to each other. And if you can go to like a science, math, art class, you can start to see how everything is interconnected. And through that connection, I think students have more of an opportunity to take something away from that they can relate to. But yeah, art is one of the first things to get cut in public education, which is really unfortunate. There has been some work in the past decade with Congress trying to define what a well-rounded education was, and art was defined as part of that. It's also interesting. I was doing my research before doing the podcast, and I looked at a nationwide public opinion survey that the Americans for the Arts put out, and 88% of Americans agree that art is part of a well-rounded education.
Aren't you a bit unusual in the fact that you can teach art and science? Isn't that an unusual combination?
Yeah, that's the title at the bottom of my email is art science educator. Whenever I tell someone that I'm an art science educator, you get one of two reactions. And one is like, yep, I know. And then the other one is like, what do you mean by that? And I always like to elaborate on it because I think people ultimately understand the importance of art. At least I'd like to assume that.
You talk about, do you teach astronomy?
I do teach astronomy. That's one of the subjects. I also like to teach about garbage and its role in our society. But then anything that involves nature, I find nature very inspiring.
Do you think there's a connection? Let me ask you this another way. Tell me, and this was not planned for our discussion, but tell me about Fibonacci and its relationship to nature and people and how Fibonacci seems to connect people with nature. Take us through that. It was something that somebody asked me, and I couldn't quite articulate it. I had a feeling I knew it, but I didn't.
I might be in the same boat as you. Even though we do have a Fibonacci lesson here at the ELC, I haven't had the pleasure of teaching it. But it's my understanding that the Fibonacci sequence, which is a series of numbers, people might be familiar with it from the book that came out I think like 20 years ago, and how Mona Lisa's face has this ratio. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but it's a ratio that that forms a pattern when brought into the physical realm. And so, if you look at a flower, if you look at things that repeat themselves and get larger, it is a pattern that you will come across multiple times in nature. And the fact that unrelated aspects of nature have this ratio, this pattern, really has like a pull and an interest for a lot of people. Sorry that I can't be more specific.
No, it's okay. Not to worry. You talk about mythology of the constellations, and I'm guessing that is science creating art. Am I right?
That's hard because the mythology, storytelling is art, but to the ancient Greeks, I think they would be insulted if you said that their beliefs, their God structure was only a story. It's almost like science taking the shape of what we believe, of preconceived notions. So you have Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, which are these two constellations in the sky that are these big bears with really long tails. And long story short, these two characters get grabbed by the tail. These two bears get grabbed by the tail and swung over Zeus's head, stretching out their tails and like thrown into the sky. So this story helps. When I tell this story to students, they're obviously very interested in the story, but they're also perplexed by these shapes and can have a better memory of these shapes through the story.
So I think you've made this point before, the role of art in nature education. I was curious, what is the age group that you find that you teach and most responds to the teaching?
I have taught everywhere from preschool to adult, and I don't think there's an age limit to who appreciates the art and nature combination. It works really well for the younger age group because they're very tactile and enjoy and probably learn better by doing. And then it works well for the older population because I think that when creating art, people are often surprised at their own abilities. So there's pleasure for every age.
Who's your favorite artist?
Oh my gosh. My favorite artist, I don't think I've ever thought this thought before. There is an artist that I appreciate a lot, and it might be an easy answer, and it's not necessarily because of his art, but it's because of his approach. I find myself like quoting him often, and that's Pablo Picasso. I think that he was an excellent copycat. He was able to look at so many different kinds of art forms and then recreate it from his own perspective. Because of that and his like fearlessness to just copy and do, that he is like one of the most famous artists of our time. And the quote that I like to quote from him is, learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist.
Isn't most art copied?
I would say that art never happens in a vacuum. You're constantly surrounded by stimuli, and whether it's art or a leaf or the road that you're driving down, that's going into your brain and getting processed in ways that we don't understand. So, I would argue that most art is a copy.
I know we have a conversation coming up in a few weeks that about garbage and why it's important. Your favorite subject. Anyway, thanks so much for coming on. That was Heather Kramer from the Environmental Learning Center. And I'm David Yakir. You're listening to Yak About Today. David here. I'd like to speak to all the not-for-profit, educational, environmental, or any organization that gives back to their community. I want to tell you about a group called the Podgeist Network that I think can be of help. You all know that funds are hard to come by today. Your awareness campaigns are expensive, and distributing your curriculum or messaging can be difficult. That's why the Podgeist Network was created. Many organizations turn to podcasting, vlogging, and social media as a means to fundraise, distribute their content, and of course, make these an integral part of their go-to-market plans. The Podgeist Network can help you manage your messaging, creative content, and production, all with the purpose of helping you achieve your mission of serving your community in a cost-effective way. You see, what sets the Podgeist Network apart is that they will partner with you in developing the strategy to raise the money to fund those projects. That's why I'm proud to be part of the Podgeist Network. So, if you want to learn more, why not give us a call at 212-244-6224. That's 212-244-6224. Or write to us at info@thepodgeist.com. That's info@thepodgeist.com. And of course, you can go directly to thepodgeist.com. Thanks for listening. So, I've been thinking about a conversation we had at dinner the other night. I was asked by one of the neighbors how much I walked each day. I thought how great that they noticed. I told them I walk between 4 and 6 miles virtually every morning. Now, for those of you that have been listening to this show, I do not call it a walk, but a WOG, W-O-G, a walking jog. It seems that everyone at the table was doing some kind of cardio exercise, except for one who thought it was too late to begin an exercise program. And we talked about how this sets the generation of baby boomers apart from all others. We never stopped embracing youth, whereas generations before us embraced aging. I then asked what they are doing for strength training. Most of them thought cardio was enough. I then proceeded to tell them my morning regimen. I WOG, W-O-G, 3 times a week. I do yoga 2 times a week for a combination of mental and physical health. And I go to the gym 3 times a week for strength training. All before 9 in the morning, by the way. I told them that strength training was important. And if they didn't believe me, then we have to do a small little test right here, right now. I said, from a sitting position, stand up without using your hands. One person at the table could do that, and that was me. I explained that as we age, if we don't keep up with strength training, we will be at the mercy of canes, walkers, and wheelchairs earlier than we need to be. And by the way, strength training also works for cardio. I then pointed them to an article in the New York Times by Gretchen Reynolds, who also made the case that strength training and muscle mass can affect your heart. She says, for men at least, entering middle age with plenty of muscle may lower the later risk of developing heart disease by more than, get this, 80%. And she says how much muscle you have now could indicate how healthy your heart will be later. And this was based on a new study of muscle mass and cardiovascular disease. The study finds that, for men at least, entering middle age with plenty of muscle lowers the subsequent risk of developing heart disease by as much as, again, 81% compared to the risks for other men. These results add to the growing evidence that building and maintaining muscle is essential for healthy aging, while also underscoring that the impacts may be different for men and women. Now, skeletal muscle is, of course, one of the body's most versatile and active tissues, providing the strength and power, get this, we need to grasp, reach, lift, and stride. Muscle is also critical for our metabolic health, slurping and storing blood sugar and producing specialized hormones that move to other tissues, like the brain and fat cells, where they jumpstart various chemical processes. So, Next time you wake up early in the morning to go for the bike ride, walk, or jog, remember there is one other thing you owe your body: the strength to live on. Ciao. Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get... As we come to the close of another week of Yak About Today, I want to thank you again for listening. Remember, you can go to yakabouttoday.com to listen to any of our shows, or if you are new here and listening to one of the podcast networks that carry us, consider subscribing. And remember, you can write to us at david@yakabouttoday.com, or follow us on Facebook or Twitter at YakAboutToday. I'm David Yakir, and I hope that we can chat next time. Same place, anytime you're free to listen. Peace.